Yeah, I think like the first thing I'm interested in, of course, I'm streaming, right? So I'm interested in streaming, right? And you've also
Sure.
been streaming every once in a while. So how did you get into that? What's your goal with streaming? Do you? Yeah, I think let's just do that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've always really enjoyed teaching. This is true for like my personal life and as well as this. Just anything I'm passionate about, I love sharing it with people. And I enjoy, like seeing that the light bulb come on and breaking down really complex topics for more people to get involved with. And in many cases, it's been extremely beneficial for myself too. Right? You learn
Hmm.
it better yourself, and these people will sometimes go off and build libraries that you end up using. It's great. Um, so I think streaming is just kind of a natural extension of that. Given that we're all kind of in quarantine these days, it was a great opportunity to stay motivated and interested in a topic and get other people involved and be a little bit social. So there's some good experiments for just kind of diving into some things that I'm interested in, and it's a little bit lower pressure, I think, than the other mediums, right? So if I blog something or write a book on something, it's kind of set in stone, I guess. Not really stone, whatever the internet is set in. Um,
In magnetic.
but when you're just doing a stream, even if it's recorded, I do record my streams. You can go looking back on them, but it just feels more casual. So
Oh yeah.
I don't worry too much if you make mistakes or you try something and it completely doesn't work. That's all part of the streaming process. So yeah,
Okay, yeah, definitely. I can definitely. Oh, by the way, thank you for the follow. I think there's been a couple of follows, and for some reason
hmm.
I'm not getting the event sound. Sorry about that, but yeah, thank you very much for the follows, the Cactus Smoothie and Zero Illusions earlier. Um, yeah, I can definitely understand that, and that's also true for me, right? If I haven't even written, I have a blog post that I rarely write to, because especially since I started streaming, right? Because it's kind of like, yeah, you need to put a lot more effort, and you kind of, I think I get a lot out of streaming as well. So I'd rather do some stream, and even
Mm-hmm.
like the bits that I maybe prepare a bit more, I'll go to YouTube as, okay, this is I like that, so I'll keep this as a, like, I'll cut this small part of a stream, and I kind of like how that went, so I can upload it,
Yeah.
and otherwise just like feels a lot less pressure, right? um, so I understand that for sure.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the amount of content that you've managed to churn through on your stream. It's it's great to come and hang out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and thank you very much for joining the streams and participating. That's, as again, like when you're doing this sort of thing, that's the thing you're looking for, right? At least a couple, because you can't expect a ton of people to join, right? It's Haskell, right? There's not a ton of people doing Haskell, and then there's like
It's not.
time zone differences, right? There's like people are busy and so on, but definitely it's. Like just a handful of people that are active, and you can chat with or talk to, even like on chat or voice. That's very fun to do, a very fun experience.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the differences between Haskell and other communities in some of those regards. Actually, just this week too, I was looking into the Hacktoberfest sort of
Mm-hmm.
project, and I was talking with someone, and they're like, "Oh, that's just a spam thing, right? Like everybody just posts a bunch of like typo fixes and tries to get a T-shirt." And I was like, "Well, I mean, like that might be true for a lot of communities, but just as an experiment, I went on GitHub, I searched all of the Hacktoberfest issues in Haskell that have been closed since the month started, and I saw all like relatively high quality submissions. People are going through and actually working on things, and I was like, oh, like I wonder why this is different. And I checked, and actually Haskell isn't listed on the Hacktoberfest website, interestingly enough.
Probably.
So I think it's just genuinely interested people who are trying to do good, and it's a different community than some of the larger ones in a lot of good ways. There's downsides too, but
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, again, since you brought up the Hacktoberfest issue, right? Like, there's been a lot of threads and conversation on Twitter and on Slack lately, like in the last couple of days, where especially maintainers are a bit like are really not looking forward for this sort of thing, right? Especially because of the thing you've mentioned, right? That they, like some reporters get spammed with like PRs which generally just change like a typo or like maybe even some don't even try, right? Don't try to find a typo, just add some silly thing there. Because I think Hacktoberfest counts even PRs that are not merged, right? Like it's up to the maintainers to kind of flag the PRs are spam or not appropriate or whatever in order for Hacktoberfest to not count them. Which kind of makes sense because some projects, for example, have weird ways to merge code. Like I think some projects even like the owner will just merge it manually and close the PR or something, right? Right. So yeah, that kind of makes sense from that perspective, but other like it kind of puts like I think I like the idea of Hacktoberfest being opt-in, right, rather than any project, because like you can't put that sort of burden on people who already
burden on other people.
Yeah. Like, okay, if you can prepare and like even have issues ready, or even if not, right, just say that you're up to like at least going through PRs and then getting that sort of attention, then you can get that attention, right, and figure it out later. Yeah,
definitely. And it's really cool to see too, specifically Kawainik, I'll call out, they've been doing a lot of cool work with Hacktoberfest this month. I think they set up like kind of like a beginner project for people to work through and learn some Haskell and learn, like create a pull request with some implementations. And they've gone through and tagged all of their repositories and have been very proactive in getting people involved with this. And I think that's really great to see.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen actually ByteString, the ByteString library in base submitted some beginner friendly issues and people are working on them. And that'd be very cool to get your first merged Haskell pull request into the ByteString library that everybody uses.
Yeah, Vince is actually working on something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, that's actually a cool thing to do. He was mentioning earlier that, or yesterday rather, that hey, like it's a cool thing, right, to add a like simple function to ByteStrings and know that like a lot of people will be using it, right, later, like some, because like it's one of those libraries which pretty much everybody ends up using. Yeah,
and they're like kind of intimidating to work on those libraries, but I mean, really, it's just like you can add something, and if it's helpful, it'll help a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. And they're like these are by no means complete libraries, right? There's always things to change, to add, to Okay, cool. So. Okay, so the question you dodged from earlier was.
What was the original?
Sorry, was that? So I guess you kind of answered, but I'm wondering if there's anything else. So you kind of said, I was asking what do you expect to get or hope to get out of streaming. So it was just the teaching part, or is there anything else you? Or
I don't think I have any particular goals with streaming. I haven't set any. I haven't set any personal goals or plans to, stream every week like you have, or, stream every month like that. It's not something that I'm currently focusing on. I think I focus more on like my blog posts and that sort of thing, but while I'm kind of figuring it out, I'll jump on a stream and show up that way. So I wouldn't say that I have long-term plans for it, or even that you can necessarily count me to keep on streaming reliably. I'll probably just throw one out there every once in a while, so keep an eye out for it. But it's not, I don't think, something that I'm going to keep doing super long term.
Okay.
But I've really enjoyed my time with it so far.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's every once in a while, whenever you feel like it, they're still enjoyable. So keep it up.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, cool. So okay, what about you've been doing like these presentations with like co-monads and then lenses and so your blog posts and everything. Have you any interested in teaching things that are more basic, or are you mostly focused on things that are also interesting to you, or things that are a bit of intermediate rather than like teaching Haskell from the like first principles, right? Kind of like the book, or like any other sort of like to beginners?
So I think for me, I would answer that by saying that I primarily use teaching as a learning tool. So I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, where I'll get excited and passionate about something, and then I will have to dig into it in order to write a blog post or do a talk or something, or write a book. And so that's kind of where most of the stuff that I'm teaching about is coming from. So all of my blog posts are something that I found interesting and had to learn in order to write the post. So I think for that, I'll probably continue teaching and writing about the things that I'm, just learning or just discovering or kind of getting interested in. And kind of like we talked about earlier, I think there are a lot of people in the beginner space now who are actually doing a really phenomenal job.
Mm-hmm.
So, people like Kawainik and Type Classes has some really great stuff. And there's a lot of really, really good beginner material coming out. And so I'm pretty happy with how that ecosystem is looking at the moment. And I'm personally, I love pulling another commit library off the shelf and saying, okay, what is an adjunction and how do we use it? Let's write a blog post about that. So
Okay.
That's what I've been focusing on and probably will be in the future. Right now, I'm digging into continuations a lot. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see me posting little random snippets of continuations and what we can use them for that people maybe haven't seen before.
Okay, so I guess we should be expecting a blog post on continuations at some point.
Yeah, I think so, probably. So I've been looking at using continuations for performant. So I've been working on a terminal library for kind of imitating React hooks, and like the React sort of component style of rendering for a terminal UI. And it turns out that there's some really interesting continuation applications where you can, for instance, listen to mutable variables in a component, and when it triggers a change, you'll only re-render everything that happens in that component from that point. So it kind of works like a Docker image or like like the Docker layers, where if you change your file system, it'll only rebuild the Docker image from the point where you use files from your system. And so you could do the same thing when rendering, image components and that sort of thing by capturing continuations. And it can actually be very performant, very interesting to work with.
Cool.
So yeah, probably a post on that or a library or something coming at some point, unless I get bored or hit dead end. But we'll see.
Cool. That sounds very interesting. Okay, so then I guess your approach to teaching Haskell is more of a, hey, I'm interested about this, so while I learn, I might as well do a blog post and maybe write a library or do a stream or whatever, but only in like, it's usually when you're also interested and want to learn something.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. My Twitter bio says, Chris Penner, if Cunningham's Law was a person, which kind of means the way I love to learn and discover things is by just throwing ideas at the internet, and people will correct you or teach you or help you as you go along. And if nobody corrects you, then maybe you're onto something. So writing blog posts has been really helpful like that. And of course, I'll correct them afterwards, so I don't lead anybody astray. But I like to write my posts in an exploratory style where it's kind of like, this is what I was trying, this is what I was exploring. Maybe there's something here.
Okay, cool. So I guess, do you have a sense right now of, so let's say there's somebody who comes to you and says, hey, I don't know anything about Haskell, I don't know anything about FP, how do I start? Like, what's your answer to that sort of question right now?
First answer would probably be like, pick a project. That's like, I wouldn't want to force a different style of learning on people who aren't into that sort of thing, but I've definitely seen that people who have something that they're already passionate about and are interested in, and maybe that they understand well. If you have a project that you understand well, you feel like you're making progress even if you're butting up against the language. So when I started on a text editor, I could see, I know how a text editor works, and I'm starting to understand how that maps into Haskell, and so that was very satisfying for me, and I got something out of it. So that would be my probably biggest recommendation, is pick a project that you'd like to build, something, simple and achievable, or just go for it and make something crazy. And then chop off little pieces of that and see what you can build. And for me, I really like to just learn solutions to the problems that I encountered as I went along. And that way I always knew why I was trying to learn something. And it was very helpful in Stack Overflow questions. If you tell people why you want to learn something, they might just say, "Oh, don't do this at all. Go this other route," and you can kind of keep yourself on the right track.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good point, right? Because like there's so much depth to Haskell that your questions can be very easily misunderstood for something else. And like sometimes there's even that, right? Because I remember at some point in a stream, maybe it was last week or something, when I was going through the Haskell Reddit. There's this person saying, "Hey, I want to learn Haskell. What project should I do?" And somebody told him do a compiler, but like it was literally just a like full on like compiler, not even interpreter, right? You just do a compiler and LLVM. I think they mentioned LLVM and whatever. Like, okay, I mean that might work for some people, but if this person doesn't have experience building compilers, then maybe that's not the thing to be doing.
Might not necessarily be for them. Yeah. Well, I think it kind of harkens back to if you're in the JavaScript community at all, you'll see these to-do apps, right? And anytime a new framework comes out, people implement the to-do app. I think it's called to-do MVC or something. There's like one in React, there's one in Angular. Well, there's probably tens of thousands in each of them in Vue and whatever. And people will just do that. They're like, oh, I'm picking up a new framework. I'll just write the to-do application, and then they'll understand how it works. So if there's an app that you always like to build in other languages, well, when you come to Haskell, try it out. It's going to probably look very different than you're used to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely be something that you either understand how it works in different languages or that you're very passionate about building, right?
Yeah.
At least one of these two should be true, if not both.
Helps keep you going a little bit. It can definitely be frustrating to learn Haskell. I try to never forget how frustrating it really was when you're like starting off and you're like, well, I just want to, I want to do something stupid, right? Like read a file and edit it and whatever. And now I have to learn like mathematical type classes and abstractions. Why am I doing this?
Oh, yes. So I'm definitely not kidding. So I'm pretty sure I've been wanting more, like, again, it wasn't like my one desire in life, right? But like somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I've been wanting to learn Haskell for about 20 years now, since I was like 16 or something.
Sure.
Oh yeah, and then like I was kind of like initially I was like, okay, I'll read this blog post, and then I kind of like it doesn't seem like I can do anything interesting with Haskell because like back then I'm not even sure they had like very good documentation, at least on IO or things like that, right? So I just played with hugs for a bit and like, okay, I can write some functions. Okay, see you later, Haskell, right? But then I kept thinking about it, and I even bought a book a long time ago, and like, but I think for me at least I needed to both. For Stack to exist because it was frustrating before, and the Cabal is way better now. But I definitely like 2-3 years ago when I started, I definitely needed Stack to exist, Haskell book to exist, this Slack. Like the FP Slack, I needed that to exist because I definitely leaned on it for a lot of questions. And even if I didn't ask that many questions in the beginning, at least seeing other people talk about Haskell kind of gave me this thing actually has a community, it exists. There's people here who who use it and seem to be using for pretty cool stuff. So that gave me some sort of hope. And I also needed to change something at work because we were having problems, and then PureScript was the target actually, right? So like for me it needed for a lot of things to happen, right? So
yeah, everything had to kind of come together.
But yeah,
I think most people who start Haskell, you can ask anyone and they're like, yeah, I tried 3 times. Like, oh, how many times did you try to learn? I tried 5 times. And I still haven't even learned it yet.
Oh yeah, so don't feel bad if you're in that. Like that's I think most people's experience with Haskell.
Yeah, the first time I tried to install Stack, I think it just sig faulted every time I tried to install it. This was like 5 years ago, and I couldn't figure it out. I filed an issue and everything, and they're like, I don't know, there's something weird with your computer. I reformatted my computer 6 months later and tried again, and everything was good. But it just refused to install, and that was all it took.
Yeah. Okay.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so then let's take a step back and look into the future, if we can for a bit, right? Because you're saying earlier that hey, I'm looking forward to maybe in a couple of years or something, maybe there'll be an FP language which tries to have lenses as a language feature, right, built into the compiler. Yeah. So like what kind of things do you think might come to Haskell in the next few years, or maybe even to the FP world, right? Like you said. Or at least which
Yeah,
are you
I
looking
mean,
forward to? Because it's hard to say for sure, right? But just like I hope this or whatever.
yeah, for sure. So I mean, there's the easiest way to think about what's going to happen for Haskell is literally just to look at the language extensions that are coming down the road, right? So um, I mean, so linear types are going to be an interesting one, but I would say that's more of a long-term thing. So they're getting added to GHC very actively right now. And then I think we're going to probably have like a 5 year period, if I'm being honest, right? Like it's going to take people time to write, GPU drivers that use linear types. Like that's not something that you can just go and do at the moment. It's
Oh
going to
yeah.
be very tricky. But once we have those, right, like that's going to be a whole new thing that I think, for instance, like fintech is going to be really interested in, like for financial, like trading stuff, and for video game, like it amazes me that people are building good, usable, functional games in Haskell right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's an underdeveloped segment, and I think that's something that's going to be really interesting um, for linear types. Dependent types are probably the thing I'm more excited about, and I actually haven't checked into it in a while to see what the status is on pi types and phi types and all of that stuff. But I'd be very excited for those to eventually make it in and then go through probably several polishing stages and then be more usable, because I do, in my quest for elegance, I guess, I really do find myself kind of bumping up against dependent types an awful lot these days. Um, and so we're going to see hopefully some usability benefits in that area. I don't think we're ever going to hit the level of usability that, for instance, languages like Idris have in that area, but Haskell has a lot of other great
Oh
benefits,
yeah.
right? Just the ecosystem and the libraries and the existing community that Idris doesn't quite yet
Well,
have. So,
and let's not forget the compiler, right? Because GHC is actually like it's a beast of a
yeah.
compiler. It optimizes the like very well. The runtime's great, so like there's a lot of benefit in using Haskell just for GHC.
Yeah, definitely. I'd also like to see some things in the future regarding just well, okay. So for instance, what is it? IHP, kind of the Ruby on Rails for Haskell. I think developing those sorts of spaces are going to be huge for making Haskell kind of viable as a business strategy or like just as another tool, right? So right now, Haskell is very much an outlier in all of those areas where, if you were at a company and you said, oh, we need to build this new service, you could probably make a case, oh, we want to build it in PHP, or we want to build it in Go, or we want to build it in JavaScript. Like all of those, you might have to justify it, but you wouldn't get laughed out of the room, right? Whereas, unfortunately, like it kind of seems like Haskell, like you might, right? It's still, oh, well, people don't actually use that for things. And I don't think that's true
Yeah.
anymore, but I think people think that it's true.
Yeah.
So I would love to see something like a Ruby on Rails for Haskell just take off. Doesn't matter if it, has a few warts in it, or it doesn't use types exactly right, or, maybe it abstracts over the abstractions you don't need to know about functor, monad, whatever. It just lets you write a cool web application. I would love to see that and just get more people, thinking of Haskell as a usable thing and not just a toy.
Interesting. Did you see Gabriel Gonzalez's talk about marketing Haskell?
I did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
he's got some very good thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder. Like, I'm curious whether I'm definitely not saying you're wrong because I don't know that you're right or wrong with that. But I'm actually curious whether something like, and I'm not saying IHP, but something like IHP, which is not very well thought out, or like might be. I don't know because I've not used IHP, but I don't think it has the.
I haven't tried it either.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people have. Like, I think the like pretty much everything I know about it is like Matt Parsons. Like he did a sort of like, okay, this is what I think is wrong with it. This is I like this about it, and so on, right? And like I wondered, would an experiment like with a failed experiment like that, and I'm not saying it is fail, right? But if it were to fail, would that hurt the language, or do you think that it doesn't matter? We should just try until something succeeds.
That it'll be interesting to see. I think like in a lot of these areas, right? I think someone who doesn't really see Haskell as a viable choice. I don't think that's going to really change their opinion, right? It'll maybe hit a little bit of confirmation bias, where they're like, oh, I already knew that, I knew it wasn't going to work. And then I think there will be maybe a small number of people where if they invested a lot of time into this and then it burned them, maybe they might never write Haskell again, and that's unfortunate. But by and large, for the community, I don't think we see like drastic problems, because it's not the same as marketing a new language, I think. So when Gabriel talks about, for instance, marketing Doll was very much in an emergent space where they needed to find their killer app. And at that point, in my opinion, right, it's very much like a make it or break it sort of feeling, where if you pick the wrong thing to associate yourself with, this is your introduction into the sphere and into marketing, and everybody will associate your language with that. Whereas with Haskell's been around longer than I have, so like it's well established, and I think it's got a little bit more momentum. It's gonna. I don't think IHP going wrong is gonna hurt Haskell too much.
Well, I think we were talking about different talks, different Gabriel talks there, because like I mean
I think I might be talking about a podcast he did actually.
Okay, so I'm talking. He gave a talk, and I think there were previous iterations, but the one I watched was from a very recent conference. I think it was either the Munich one or like Zurich Hack. I think it was Zurich Hack, but I might be like at least that recent, right around past couple of months or so. And he was talking about marketing Haskell to like work like to other programmers, right? And he was kind of aiming at, and I think it was kind of related to what you were saying in a way, because he probably took the lesson learned from Doll and kind of tried to apply them to Haskell, right? And he was kind of saying, okay, I think we should market Haskell to, or not to, but as something that Haskell is very good at, right? So rather than say, okay, you can use Haskell for anything, which you can, but we probably shouldn't market it as that. We should probably market Haskell for people writing interpreters, was his suggestion, right? Because we already have like very good parsing. We have like it's very easy to write an AST, write a parser, and then like kind of interpret it, right? That's something that Haskell is very good at. And even here, we probably need some more work to get people from outside the Haskell community understand that. I think it's Haskell Love. Thank you, Eduardo. I think that's the one. Haskell Love is probably where.
Oh, okay.
This was.
I just linked a podcast he did for Cursive, I think, where they talk about tech evangelism, and he talks about marketing Doll. That's a very good one too.
So kind of like, and that is his point, right? We probably need to first kind of work on these libraries, kind of decide. And again, we don't have to decide as a community. Okay, the best parsing library is megaparsec, period, right? It probably is, but we don't need to. Like we don't need that on like the Haskell.org website, right? Because that's unfair to the other library authors. But maybe we need like somebody like kind of like IHPs, right? A company or a group of individuals kind of say, okay, if we want to do parsing, we should probably push megaparsec or some other library, and then I know recursion schemes and whatever else, right? Like pick 3-4 libraries that are probably things that you need when building something like this, and have a like kind of a tutorial, a blog, a repository, starter kit, and everything, something like that, right? And kind of like, okay, this is how you use it, this is how you do it, and of course you can do it in other ways, but this is how we recommend you do it because we think this is the easiest or the best or whatever, right?
Yeah. So I think I definitely agree, and like having a killer app I think it is really important, right? And so I think you're right on the path that like parsing, I think, and AST transformations are Haskell's killer app. It's something that it's very good at. And so you see a lot of new languages being written in Haskell for exactly that reason, right? It's great at parsing, it's great at these AST manipulations, and it's got like all the literature, all of the libraries. It's just unparalleled in those areas. And I think we can probably brand it's funny because the killer apps I can think of are all either other languages that are built in Haskell or something like Pandoc, which I think Pandoc is just an amazing piece of technology. And ironically, it is exactly those two things, right? It's parsing and it's AST manipulation. So it's something that Haskell is very, very good at. And I'd love to see us branch out and, pick maybe one or two other things to be very, very good at.
Yeah. And again, you said definitely not my idea, it's Gabriel's idea. I'm just echoing it from the talk he gave.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, definitely, I totally agree with that, right? Because like parsing is something that's very awkward, or can be very awkward in many other languages. And a lot of popular languages resort to regex when they need to do parsing, which is definitely something that at least I hope catches the like mainstream, even if not through Haskell. At least like a lot of languages need parsing libraries.
Yeah, every language needs at least one parser, right? So yeah, it's true. It's very pervasive. I'd be really curious to see. Maybe I'll do this, and actually, I'd love to look through and just find other things that I think Haskell could be good at, and maybe hunt that down, because there's just so many things that it could. I think data science is one where there's a lot of untapped potential, and I think Gabriel probably knows that more than most. But it hasn't seemed to be able to break through in that regard. I think it's maybe too hard to experiment or something like that.
There's also like you need tooling, right? You need good UI tooling for that to get people into that.
Yeah, right, exactly. If you're, if whatever Explorer you're using has like an R interpreter built in, you're just going to use that.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
Python notebooks, right? Like Jupyter notebooks are a really great example. So I don't know if there's something like that for Haskell, but that'd be helpful.
Yeah. Okay, and again, like I also have no idea whether, in the sense of what the Gabriel was saying, whether a failed experiment would hurt the language or not. I have no idea, but I guess there's not much we can do about it, right? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, maybe not just the two of us. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And also, I'd be cautious too about. I personally do really want to see Haskell succeed. I love it; it's great. But I mean, to succeed at the expense of maybe a tool that's already better suited for that thing, well, maybe we don't need to do that, right? If Haskell's great at parsers and this other thing is great at that, I mean they can coexist. There's no need for competition.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I don't think Haskell has to, at least, or should, or right now, or maybe ever fight Rust for like systems code, right? There's like systems for exactly. It's not something that, I mean, it might be better in some cases if you have, it has to be very, very correct, and you need like to do a lot of, I don't even know if I can even come up with a reasonable example for that, right? But like that's not something you want to do, right? It's not a battle you want to fight. Definitely not now, right? So
yeah, not at this point. Nobody's writing a web browser in Haskell at the moment. But maybe linear types will do that. Who knows?
Oh yeah, sure. But and also, like, for example, even though I love Haskell and there was like my first FP job was Haskell, right? Even though I did some PureScript in the beginning at the previous job, my first FP job was doing 100% Haskell. But I would still not use JS. I'm sorry. I still use PureScript over it. So it's
the laziness is very interesting in that regard. I'd love to see. I think there's going to be some huge benefits for like WASM, like a WebAssembly backend for PureScript, right?
Oh yeah.
I think that's going to be a great opportunity to exploit there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And if PureScript succeeds instead of Haskell, I have zero problem with
that.
Absolutely
no problem.
They're both great languages. They're both basically the same. They have their own quirks, but they're both wonderful to work with.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I've had that conversation before, and previously I used to say that, hey, if you need to do backend, do Haskell, don't do PureScript. But somebody from the PureScript community called me out on it, and I think they're totally right. There's no reason to do that. Like, it's very rarely that you actually do high performance multi-threading parallel code when you're doing a web backend, right? Yeah. You're usually just waiting for I/O, and that probably means PureScript is better than Haskell, because the Node is probably way better at dealing with waiting for I/O than what you can naively write as a Haskell programmer, unless you're very, very good at high performance, low level, and you want to invest a lot of time into that. So.
Yeah. I'd say like Haskell is probably better at party tricks, just because of laziness. And you can do this weird, cool fixed point programming, and you can write the one-liner Fibonacci sequence. But for real world stuff, PureScript will get you there, no problem.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, well, let's see. Any other subject that I forgot to to bring up?
I think we covered everything on the list. Yeah, I've been going for about a good 2 hours here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Feel it's a great chat.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Okay.
it a lot.
Well, any closing thoughts then?
I don't
Maybe
know.
plans
Thanks
for the future,
chiming in.
whatever, like that. I guess you kind of mentioned the count. You're looking at the count, right? So I guess that's the
Yeah, that
close-ish future.
might be coming up. I'll write another book at some point. I'll commit to writing one more book before I die. At some point, we'll see how that goes. So keep an eye out for that. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris L Penner. I'll post a link to that.
Yeah.
And yep, and yeah, check out my book if you're at all interested in optics. It's pretty approachable, I think. And other than that, yeah, see you around in like Haskell chat and stuff like that. If anyone's not on the Haskell Slack room, it's a great place to hang out. So
yeah, I think
you can probably just Google that.
So I think the like after you've gone to the like you've decided which project you want to work on, that's step number 2. Join the FP Slack if you want to learn Haskell or PureScript, because yeah. Okay, and again, you can see. Yeah, oh yeah, you can see like Chris's what's it called? Like his website and the link to his book, right? Like somewhere there under his there. But obviously they'll be linking in chat. I'll link them in the YouTube. So yeah, follow Chris because he's awesome and publishing a lot of cool content. So. Okay, well, thank you very much for.
If you don't follow, oh yeah, and follow Vlad too, because like these streams are awesome. I love that you do it like every day of the week, basically. It's a nice when I'm having a slow afternoon and just kind of want to take a short break. So appreciate that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and yeah, thank you for agreeing to do this podcast, and I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Yeah, talk to you soon. Thanks everyone.
Okay.
Have a great Sunday.
Bye bye.